You're watching UATV News. My name is Ina Kosinska. Good evening. COVID pandemic, local elections, constitutional crisis, ceasefire in Donbas, land market, legalization of gambling business. Ukraine recalls the most important events of the outgoing year. What will Ukrainians remember from 2020? Our correspondents will tell.
Coronavirus pandemic. The first case of COVID-19 was registered in Ukraine in March. For 9 months, more than 1 million Ukrainians became infected. Over 680,000 people overcame the disease. 18,000 died. According to the Ministry of Health, at the beginning of the pandemic, country medical facilities had only 12,000 places for patients with coronavirus. Now there are 46,000, of which more than half are equipped with oxygen. If in spring the critical figure for Ukraine was 3,000 new cases daily, which could make the medical system collapse, now the situation is improved and the figure is 10 times more. We also continue working to get the vaccine against COVID-19. We are really looking forward to it at the end of the first quarter of 2021. Our doctors and our military, as well as social workers and teachers, will receive it first. And of course, our citizens from the temporarily occupied territories will be included in the vaccination plan. We don't forget about them. These are our people. They are Ukrainians. The ceasefire in Donbas. Since the ceasefire came into force on July 27, the longest ceasefire since the beginning of the conflict started in the east of Ukraine. We can say that we managed to stop the very hot phase of provocations. This is undoubtedly an achievement of the outgoing year. We have built several checkpoints. They are made according to the latest architecture and technology. People from the occupied territories can easily come to Ukraine and receive administrative services. The state policy towards the inhabitants of those territories was changed completely and was made more human. Despite the pandemic, we have opened new checkpoints. This is very important. This is a demonstration of our attitude towards people who live on that territory. They are our citizens. I believe there is a progress. Opening of the land market. On March 31, Parliament lifted the moratorium on agricultural land sales. The law gave landowners the right to sell or buy land. Before that, people could only lease the land. Sale of land will be allowed from July 1, 2021. Legalization of gambling activities. On July 14, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine approved a bill on regulation of gambling. The document authorizes the operation of casinos, slot machine halls, bookmakers' offices. It is also allowed to conduct gambling businesses on the internet. This stimulates the development of the hospitality industry. First of all, gambling establishments will be located in 3 5-star hotels. We expect that in 2021, the state budget will receive about $25 million for gambling industry. This money is not from taxes, but from the sale of gambling licenses. On October 27, the Constitutional Court of Ukraine cancelled criminal liability for false declaration of officials' income. The court has also blocked the right of the National Agency for the Prevention of Corruption to check electronic declarations. Anti-corruption reform was set to be stopped. In December, the Verkhovna Rada restored the powers of the agency. Parliament has also returned responsibility for false declarations. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky is going to toughen the punishment for false declarations. In January, he is going to submit a corresponding bill to the Verkhovna Rada. It's going to foresee imprisonment for violators. On December 29, the president dismissed the chairman of the Constitutional Court, Alexander Tupytsky, for a period of 2 months. The decision was made after Volodymyr Zelensky received a petition from the Office of the Prosecutor General. It says that Tupytsky is suspected in a corruption crime. Local elections in Ukraine. The turnout was low, 37%, but at the same time the vote allowed to reset the local governments throughout the country. The Sluga Narodu party received the most mandates and is represented in local councils throughout Ukraine. The elections, in my opinion, were quite democratic. There is no single winner, no uniformity in the results. Decentralization has played a role. It helped local elites to concentrate quite serious resources and gain support. These elections have enforced decentralization in Ukraine. Elections were not carried out only in the uncontrolled territory of Donbas and in the occupied Crimea. According to the President of Ukraine, elections will be held only after withdrawal of the Russian forces and all illegal armed groups. Reported by Nick Starkov, Artyom Golub, UATV News.
The coronavirus has become a major challenge for the global economy in 2020. The pandemic has formed a new term, corona crisis. In spring, experts predicted a collapse of the economy comparable to the Great Depression of the 30s, but the worst scenarios did not come true. Our correspondent figured out how the Ukrainian economy survived such a difficult year and when will we be able to recover from this shock.
Fall of GDP by 8%, growth of inflation and unemployment. This was the International Monetary Fund's forecast for the Ukrainian economy in the middle of the year. But the safety margin turned out to be higher. Ukraine ends 2020 with an annual economic decline of 4.5%. Representatives of the Ministry of Economic Development say that the second quarter turned out to be the most difficult. But even then, the collapse was lower than in European countries.
Considering lockdowns that took place before Easter and the restrictions that were approved at the initial stages, the fall in the second quarter was 11.4%. At the same time, in the EU, taking into consideration all 27 member states, in the second quarter the GDP decline was 14%.
Since the middle of the year, economic indicators began to stabilize. In the third and fourth quarters, the drop in GDP was about 3%. One of the main elements of our economy is foreign trade, economic expert Ivan Us explains. And it was possible to not only restore it, but even increase it in comparison with the last year.
In May 2020, foreign trade decreased by 28%, and in November of 2020, the trade increased by 3.5%. That is, November demonstrates growth. Moreover, exports in November increased by 9%, which is very important for the Ukrainian economy.
In the second half of the year, the turnover of domestic trade also increased by 12% in November of 2020 compared to the same period of 2019. Among other things, it became possible to intensify economic relations thanks to the laws approved by the Verkhovna Rada concerning the support of business and the purchasing ability of the population.
The president said, let's help people and try to allocate at least 1,000 hryvnias, what the budget allows, at least for those who are limited in their work. Businesses and people need help before crisis occurs or right at the beginning. Therefore, this is an example of very successful DIA program. You just go there and immediately get the result.
The National Bank of Ukraine says the inflation in the country has accelerated, but it was not critical. This year, the National Bank took an unprecedented step. The discount rate was reduced to 6%. This is a historical minimum for Ukraine. It has been kept at this level for 6 months already, which also stimulates economic activity.
Introducing the rate, the National Bank set certain conditions for banks to function. Accordingly, banks are cutting rates on their loans and deposits. This stimulates consumption and investment more, which accelerates the economy.
Due to the coronavirus crisis, the International Monetary Fund has revised its cooperation programs with countries, preferring short-term programs instead of extended ones. Ukraine was no exception. Instead of 3-year lending program, we agreed on a standby for 18 months. The first tranche, more than $2 billion, came to Ukraine in summer. Negotiations are underway with the IMF to obtain 3 more parts of the loan.
There was a Zoom meeting with the IMF mission. This is a signal for investors that negotiations are underway, that Ukraine is fulfilling its obligations. Of course, all this should be brought to an end before the decision of the board of directors, so that the money are allocated. But the arrival of the mission is enough for international and domestic investors to support Ukraine financially.
The Ministry of Economic Development expects the Ukrainian economy to grow at 4 and 6% of the GDP next year. The country will be able to fully recover from the COVID crisis only in 2022. However, experts warn all positive scenarios will depend on the effectiveness of vaccination in Ukraine and in the world. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Yulia Krychkova, UATV News.
Robot-assisted surgery, a breakthrough in virology, and inventions to fight COVID-19. Achievements in the medical sphere through 2020 have mostly depended on the coronavirus spread scale. However, not only pandemic contributed to revolutionary findings. My colleagues will tell you more.
COVID-19 vaccine development became one of the most awaited findings this year. A German-American joint venture by BioNTech and Pfizer passed through all stages of clinical trials as quickly as 11 months. Now countries run on national immunization campaigns. We welcome the encouraging vaccine news from Pfizer and BioNTech Group and salute all scientists and partners around the globe who are developing new, safe, efficacious tools to beat COVID-19. The planet is experiencing unprecedented scientific innovation and collaboration to end the pandemic. This year, Nobel Prize in Medicine is granted for the identification of the hepatitis C virus. Laureates are Americans Harvey Alter and Charles Rice, together with British microbiologist Michael Houghton. According to the World Health Organization, 71 people today suffer from hepatitis C in chronic form. And Swedish scientists have developed a blood test that can show proneness to Alzheimer's disease. This gives hope to a simple and reliable diagnostic appears in future. However, the research has not yet been completed.
I don't think this blood test should be used for screening of healthy individuals. And the reason is that we don't have any therapy today that stops or slows down the disease.
Once associated with covert military operations, drones are being used in fight between medics and malaria. Vehicles are used to identify spots where mosquitoes are most likely to breed, and then they spray chemical agents killing the malaria transmitters. Berliners use drones to deliver COVID-19 testing kits. They may work regardless of any weather conditions and contain up to 80 samples per one shipping. Also, traffic jams make no barrier for them. They are also used to deliver drugs to the isle near Scotland's western coast.
We're going to be flying COVID testing kits, PPE, from the mainland to the island where communications are very difficult. You have to have ferries, cars, it can take a very long time.
This high-tech marvel is a robosurgeon called Vercius. It is designed to be used in keyhole surgery. It's a method when a surgery is carried out through several very small punctures instead of greater incision. The surgeon controls the robot using a joystick. At the same time, he sees everything that happens inside. The robot is already widely used in the UK, Italy, India and France. Reported by Nick Starkov, Ksenia Bugay, UATV News.
2021 is coming. The citizens of Kiribati, the island state situated in western part of the Pacific Ocean, welcomed the New Year first. New Zealand, Australia and South Korea were the next countries in line to mark the holiday. Celebrations are smaller, shorter and more muted this year amid fears of coronavirus outbreaks, but it didn't ruin the holiday spirit. New Zealand celebrated New Year's Eve with a spectacular show in Auckland. Revelers on the waterfront watched the 5-minute show with brightly colored fireworks and laser lighting shooting in the sky over the city's neighbor. Baker Island near the United States will become the last place on Earth to enter 2021. "2020 wasn't easy, but it wasn't bad either. It will be a year seared in all our memories." As it finally comes to an end, all our team is wishing you a happy, healthy and prosperous new year. May all your wishes come true, wishing you a 2021 filled with lots of joy and, of course, with good news. That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook pages. Thank you for watching. See you on UATV channel.